Be out of the way. I want to welcome everybody again to our You Are Not Alone class. This is our final session. And if you have missed any of these recordings, again, you're probably watching this on YouTube, so you can look at our channel and see classes 1, 2, and 3 that are posted there. We've had a really great experience these last few weeks and looking forward to another great evening this evening as we discuss sort of what's next. All right, what do we do with what we've been talking about these last 4 weeks? So let me talk through last 3 weeks. Tonight's week 4. Let me talk through sort of our order of schedule tonight and then introduce our first speaker to get us rolling. Amy Cerniglia is going to get us started and present for about 20-25 minutes on our main topic. Then we'll go into our breakout rooms. You got about 20 minutes of breakout time last week. Hopefully that was more useful for you and helpful. So we'll try to accomplish that again tonight. And then after your first breakout, we'll come back. Tonight's story is going to be a little different because it's recorded for us. So we have an audio recording of our storyteller, and I'll introduce him. And then Richard Van Treese from Samaritan is our counselor who is going to share again with us tonight for a therapeutic response. And then I'll send you away again for your final breakout session for our class, You Are Not Alone. And I think that's all the housekeeping stuff I got. So Amy is going to start us off tonight. And the key topic for tonight, the main theme, is finding and creating direction for yourself and or your church and building community, or finding community for yourself. That's been the theme these last 3 weeks. So she's a good resource for this. And I know she's going to be able to give you some things to think about and talk about in your breakout rooms. If you don't know Amy, she is the director of music and outreach at Peace Presbyterian Church, which has had a solid presence here these 4 weeks of this class. So Amy, we're very grateful for you to step in tonight and get us started with our conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me here. And it's so wonderful to see all these faces, many of which I've been seeing the past few weeks of our classes. In addition to my work at Peace, I also work for the Covenant Network of Presbyterians, which is a national organization supporting LGBTQ inclusion and often addressing this very topic. So many churches have the same questions about what next? How do we move forward? So thank you so much for inviting me to share tonight. As a Christian who identifies as queer, I am really blessed by communities affirming that no one is alone, that no one has to practice their faith and walk with God in isolation. Yet affirmation is a journey. It's more than a single moment or a box that you can check off and say, great, we've finished affirming. Society is always changing. People are always gaining new language to describe their experiences. People are finding new ways to express themselves. Community groups that seek to support LGBTQ people, not just churches, but also schools and resource centers, have to be updating their resources and looking for fresh ways, new ways to support the LGBTQ community as society, our country, our community continues to just change. So I have a couple of practical steps or encouragements for you all tonight. And my first encouragement to you all as you move forward in this work of affirmation is to pray. In Jesus's ministry to the outcasts, the downtrodden, and to everybody, he frequently withdraws for prayer. We read that in scripture. So as with Jesus, prayer can lead us back again and again to an awareness of God's grace and love. And our spirit, as we affirm others, will benefit from prayer. Our spirit will show up in our work. What I mean is, a church can have a rainbow flag outside, but that doesn't really mean very much without true warmth and hospitality and God's love visible and felt within that church. And prayer changes our hearts. We know this as Christians. It helps us to better love God and our neighbors. one church could feel more welcoming than another, even if both churches have openly LGBTQ staff or policies affirming same-sex weddings. Prayer also helps us discern future directions for shared mission. So any committee that is working on this, any church or pastor or church member working on the journey of affirmation will absolutely benefit from a prayerful approach. And my second encouragement to you after prayer and during prayer is to honestly assess. Prayer and personal reflection with the Holy Spirit will reveal next steps that make sense for you and your ministry context, because next steps are going to look different for every church. So at this point, I'm going to ask a number of questions or pose some prompts to you that might generate some reflection. And if any of my questions resonate with you or with your ministry context, I'd encourage you to write it down, maybe make a note on your computer. This is something you could discuss with your small group afterwards, or just pray over on your own after the class. My first question, the kind of foundational question of a journey of affirmation: does your church offer wedding ceremonies for all couples, regardless of gender? And if not, that's a great place to begin formally affirming the LGBTQ community. Structural inequalities are going to be a barrier to LGBTQ people and families in your community, even if they don't have openly LGBTQ people. But I see a lot of parents who are looking for a place where they know for sure their kids can grow up in safety and security and not have to worry about eventually one day as they get older being treated differently from other children or other adults. And there's a lot of churches that have very affirming congregants and are really fully there theologically, but they just haven't taken the time or sat down and actually formally updated the bylaws. So other churches are not at that stage yet and are going to need to spend time researching and reviewing theological resources and doing a lot of work together before they're ready to move forward with this foundational step. But once church polity supports us, we can truly enjoy the same welcome as other members of the church. But maybe your church is already there and would certainly celebrate weddings for all couples. And then my next question is, does your church offer prayers publicly that explicitly name LGBTQ people and situations or inclusion? Like, for example, just last week, you may or may not have seen this in the news. There was a non-binary student in Oklahoma named Nex Benedict who died after an attack by their classmates. So that perhaps is something to pray about and lift up in your church. This is a step you can actually take regardless of your church's bylaws about marriage or anything else, because by affirming that everyone deserves prayer, we affirm that God's love really extends to every single person. Now, maybe your church does that or is already there, but does your church clearly display its welcome and any kind of rainbow logos or colors or any symbol that indicates a specific welcome to the LGBTQ community? And maybe your infrastructure doesn't allow for different signage or alterations to your building. Maybe it's just not the right step for your context for a number of reasons. So consider your website and social media and online presence in ways that you can share that affirming message and proclamation there so that you have a visible presence. And maybe you've done that. But does your faith community have LGBTQ people serving as liturgists, communion servers, acolytes, or other worship leaders? If not, you might think about who you could ask. But for some churches, you may be thinking, well, we don't have anybody that is open about that. And that leads me to my next question. How can your church reach out to the local LGBTQ community? beyond signage or something on your church property or on your church website. In Sarasota, for example, there's a magazine called Watermark that is targeted towards local LGBTQ people. So LGBTQ people that want to be aware of the news in their community and updates can read about your church there. Churches can advertise in Watermark. And maybe a potential churchgoer who is not ready right now to explore faith community might just be blessed by seeing, wow, there's a lot of churches advertising here. There's a beautiful message of affirmation in the middle of this, in this publication. Pride is another way to affirm the community before they even step foot in the church. And so steps like that can really be helpful for people that have been hurt by the church in the past, are wary of the church. And by seeing your church's name over and over in their spaces saying, hey, we're affirming, we care about you, we want you here among us, that can go a long way towards building trust over time. So maybe your church is there. And does your church offer curriculum for children and youth that ever discusses LGBTQ issues or provides representation or affirms inclusive theology? And if not, what resources might be available? Because our children and youth are already hearing lots of information and misinformation online and in school. So where can your church provide accurate information and positive examples of people like themselves? Does your church offer registration forms that list parent and guardian instead of mother and father? And if not, how can those forms be updated? That could be a really simple, easy change that just makes people feel a little bit more relief as they fill out that form and don't have to worry about like, oh gosh, I don't quite fit in this form, in this community. Does your faith community offer adult forums or classes relating to or led by LGBTQ people? And maybe it already does. And if so, how can attendance be increased so you can reach those people that have not been coming to those classes? Like I said, regarding children and youth, there is so much misinformation about LGBTQ people that is pervading media, online, and all media outlets. So if churches don't join in the conversation and add a positive voice, if they don't share any accurate information about LGBTQ people or the issues we face, church members will still hear about it from the media and they might not be hearing accurate things. So churches can create affirming narratives and not allow the surrounding culture to create those narratives for us, because those stories rarely emphasize God's love for us. Even when the surrounding culture is affirming, it's rarely going to take that extra step and share the gospel of Jesus Christ with us. So we can be positive voices in the conversation. Does your faith community offer rituals or blessings for LGBTQ members around coming out, around gender transitioning, or other life cycle events? There are some churches I am aware of that have done blessings for members and their new name as they transition into a new identity. But there may be something else that's more relevant to your ministry context and your people. Does your church adopt inclusive language? Where can words like brothers and sisters become siblings in Christ, or family of God, or another inclusive term? Does your church offer gender inclusive restroom facilities or some single stall option for people that are just struggling to figure out, where am I, what facility should I use? Where am I going to be welcome? Where am I going to cause an issue? And how can your current infrastructure affirm the safety and needs of gender diverse people? It goes a long way when someone enters a building and they don't have to worry about what happens if I need to use the restroom while I'm here. Does your church support your denomination's LGBTQ advocacy groups? For Presbyterians, there are a couple of groups, like More Like Presbyterians and the Covenant Network of Presbyterians. If you're Methodist, that would be Reconciling Methodists. I know that Lutherans have their own advocacy group. Does your faith community offer mission trips that address specific LGBTQ issues? The Pulse Memorial in Orlando could be a really powerful place for church members to visit. The LGBTQ centers in St. Pete in Orlando, they might appreciate volunteers on specific projects. Now, I say that with the disclaimer that I have not reached out to them. I don't really know. But honestly, just hearing that a church is willing is probably very refreshing for them. And they might be able to give you leads on other opportunities available in your local community, whether that's Sarasota or Bradenton, Lakewood Ranch, or somewhere else. So those are just a few questions for reflection as you discern the next steps on your journey of affirmation as a church, as a faith leader, as a church member. And once you've been doing that prayerful reflection and listening to the Holy Spirit, you might identify a goal. And that's my third encouragement to you tonight, to identify a goal, however small. In fact, small goals can be wonderful. A change in wedding policies could be a really big step. But for churches that have taken that step, just to provide a rainbow logo on the website could be a really easy, it just takes less than an hour to do that. Once you've had conversations and people are, ready and prepared for that. Consider annual or ongoing goals, not like, okay, we're going to take one step, we're going to have one goal to be more affirming, but just the ongoing process is all about progress and not perfection. No community is really going to be perfectly affirming, but we can always be more affirming of our neighbors. And whatever next steps your church takes, let it be with a spirit of joy and grace and love for everybody involved in the work. There's a Presbyterian minister, Louise Green, who writes about the all too common experience of volunteers getting burnt out. And that's not just happening in our churches, especially post-COVID. People are burned out and tired, and church members, she writes, can sometimes meet together for months or years without really talking about anything other than the agenda on the page. So the process of affirmation should be one that brings the church together and is a joyful one, not just a list of further tasks that need to be checked off. However you would feel when you're preparing to welcome home a dearly missed member of your family is really what it means to welcome and affirm this historically marginalized community. And if your church brings that spirit of joy to the work of affirmation, members can grow in relationship to one another and to God through this process. I'm not the only one who benefits when churches work together joyfully to help the least of these. I don't just benefit as an LGBTQ person. Everybody benefits by working together with grace and joy and love. Unfortunately, things are not usually so smooth and easy. And I've been reading about different types of people that you encounter in any community organization, sacred or secular. There are typically groups of people that can be identified with certain habits and attitudes towards change and new ideas. So the smallest group is your innovators, your idea people, the people that are always on the cutting edge and ready to do the new thing and take the next step. They make up about 2.5% of any given group, according to research. So about 2.5% of people are going to be the innovators and jumping to action. Now, the next group is called the early adopters. These are people that can make change quickly. They can assess all the possibilities and evaluate them pretty quickly. They usually make up about 13.5% of the whole group. The next group is one of the largest. It's called the early majority. These are individuals who listen carefully to the innovators and the early adopters, but they like to take their time to decide. And they make up about 34% of an organization. The next group also makes up about 34% of any organization, and they're called the late majority. And the word late there is suggesting they are skeptical of change. They will usually go along with something once they see that it's a success, that it's safe, it's okay. We've been talking about this. I've had time to process it and really think about it carefully. And I see other people getting on board. And usually people from the late majority then start to feel more open to those new ideas. And finally, the last group, I did not make up these names. I found this in research about community organizing. They're called the laggards. It's an unfortunate name. These are the people that are not going to change. They make up about 16% of any organization. It's not just your church that has these people, even if it may feel like it. It's not just churches that have these people. And it's not just about LGBTQ issues where you've run into those people. And community organizers will tell you not to worry about the laggards or the late majority at first. If you go in trying to start with those people and get them on board, that can really slow the process down or maybe even end it altogether. So look for innovators to generate goals and ideas and influence the early adopters. And then once you have the innovators and the early adopters on board, that's a pretty good group of people to start creating change. And the tipping point for change is usually when about 1/5 of people start to really get on board with something and be excited about something. And change can be well on its way as other groups start to take notice. My encouragement to you is not to give the laggards any more energy than they deserve, especially early in any process. Again, not just with LGBTQ issues, but they're a small percentage that will sound like they're the majority, but they are not. And while they absolutely deserve to be heard and validated and cared for, just don't hand over control. And wherever your church has progressed in a goal, no matter how small, share that good news. That creates positive energy and helps people know that their work and their ideas were appreciated. So publicize your new welcoming statement. Publish a newsletter article about the big Pride turnout and the work that was done there. Contact the local media about your trip to Pulse, or otherwise spread the word about what you're doing. Post it online, mention in a sermon, be proud. So just to review the encouragements I've given to you, the first one is prayer, the second one is assessment, and the third is to identify a goal. And the last one that I have for you tonight is to affirm the community outside of your church. What I mean by that is, imagine your church is perfectly affirming in its theology, and it is full of openly LGBTQ people that feel celebrated and welcomed completely. So if you've reached that point and your church affirms diversity within its walls, how do you bring that good news even further? What are some next steps for that church? So you might identify local LGBTQ organizations. We might have a PFLAG chapter that's looking for a space to meet. Also youth, ALSO youth in Sarasota was not given funding by the county. So they are always in need of time, talent, and treasure. And it truly testifies to God's expansive love when your church's name is listed on the sponsor list for a Pride event, or if your church hosts a fundraiser and donates money to one of those organizations. That makes a big impression. And then when people go to those organizations, and if they mention that they're looking for a place to worship, then your name will be at the top of their minds. Your church might consider offering free HIV testing. I saw there was a missionary Baptist church in Ocala that partnered with the county health department to offer free HIV testing on June 27, which is National HIV Testing Day. 1 in 5 people that have HIV don't know they're infected and carrying it. By offering free testing, you can also help just destigmatize this. HIV does not only affect LGBTQ people, but it is often associated with our community. You might consider offering programs for local LGBTQ kids, whether or not they're members of your church. There's a church in Auburn, New York called Westminster Presbyterian that opened a Pride House. It's a space on their property set aside for programs for teens and young adults ages 13 to 18. And it's open 1 day of the week for 3 hours. The facility invites any LGBTQ youth and allies to gather there. The website describes this space as a place where kids can just express themselves, dress how they like, use whatever pronouns they like, go by their true name. They can receive support. They can be offered tutoring. They can just play games and connect with other people like themselves, because it can be really hard to find friends at school or other places in the community where they can find that. So maybe your church, maybe your volunteers at your church could set aside time and space for LGBTQ kids to connect and be themselves. You might consider empowering an LGBTQ leader from your church to lead a fellowship or a small group for LGBTQ Christians in the community. And this is something that, it would not necessarily work for every church context, but if you've got those people, and maybe you could publicize this small group in local publications. This group could meet off of the church property in some neutral third space, like a coffee shop, to help LGBTQ people that might be intimidated by showing up at a church building. And finally, my last sort of idea for a church that's pretty well there in its affirmation is to host a drag queen Bible story hour. At Calvary Presbyterian Church in San Francisco, Drag Queen Bible Story Hour raised funds for a local trans health organization, and it supported trans Christian performers, because there are those people out there that are so excited to share stories from Scripture in really funny and engaging and fresh ways. They want to use their gifts to serve the church. And trans people are in particular need of affirmation right now. So maybe some of the above suggestions or questions stirred up some discomfort in you or your congregation. And I simply invite you to pray about that. What exactly does your church want to affirm? Would your church find it easier to affirm a retired gay couple or a trans child asking where they should use the restroom? Our community is really broad and full of diverse needs. Maybe you want to affirm that your community gives us the same rights and privileges as everybody else, but maybe you want to affirm that your community goes above and beyond for the historically marginalized. But what would it mean for your church to shine a beacon of light in the LGBTQ community? There are so many ways the Holy Spirit can bring the good news of the gospel into your local LGBTQ community. But however your church affirms people like me, you are sharing the good news that we are children of God. We are part of Christ's body, bound together by his Spirit. We are beloved and we are not alone. So thank you for being here tonight and affirming that just by your presence and your interest in this topic. As a queer Christian, I am blessed by every single one of you here and deeply appreciative of this time to share tonight. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, if y'all don't have anything to talk about, you've been sleeping the last 25 minutes. I'm just saying. There is plenty to talk about. I'm going to send you off, but I want to add somewhat of a lens here to think through just on behalf of all 16 of us on the screen. Because I could just imagine if you sit maybe in one of two seats. As Amy was talking, you either sit there listening as just an attender, a church member, and when I say just, please don't hear that as a dismissal, or you're a staff member. And so you may be thinking, okay, I don't have power, so to speak. I don't have authority. I would encourage you to bring that up in your breakout talk this evening and let others speak into that. If you are a staff member, as you listen to Amy say, how about this? How about this? How about this? It could feel overwhelming, right? So she made a great point to say, don't try to do all of it. And I would add to that, don't feel like it's all up to you, the staff member. She gave some good suggestions on how to include those early adopters, those people in your church. So staff members, I would encourage you to, throw that out there in your discussion as well. You have plenty to talk about. So I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. And tonight we just have 2 breakout rooms. So take your pick. And I labeled them Harvest and Presbyterians. So take your pick and you'll have at least 10 minutes in these rooms. So they are open now for you. Enjoy your conversation. Welcome back. For those of you who went in the harvest room, I think I may have messed you guys up because KK's not here tonight and I didn't designate someone to lead the group. So I apologize for that if that was confusing when you went in that room. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen so we can hear our personal story for tonight. Some of you from Harvest will recognize Julio Gonzalez. Julio agreed to share his story, although he couldn't work, he works at this time. So I said, you know what, just record yourself and we'll listen to your story. He was able to do that by audio. So I'm going to share the audio and throw a picture up of him and his mom, because he talks quite a bit about him and his mom. So hopefully if I am not doing this correctly, someone please let me know. Hopefully I'll get this going for you.
Good evening, John and the entire Samaritan group. Just wanted to say thank you so much for this opportunity to share a little bit about with my faith community and my church services. So my name is Julio Gonzalez. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. Live here currently in Sarasota. And I'm Cuban American, raised in a very dysfunctional family, very machismo, very woman-oriented, sports-oriented, and in 2 different religious backgrounds. One of my side of my family was Catholic, and then the other side was Presbyterian. And but I always knew along, probably as early in my late teens, that my interest was in men and not in women. Even though I had been dating and was at one point engaged to a woman, I just knew that those were my interests. But because of my upbringing and being in that Cuban culture, it was very difficult for me to come out and be the person that I wanted to be and should be. I played sports all my life. I played baseball and track and did gymnastics. Try to cover up and really be that. And I could tell you that coming out was not easy. I remember the day that I shared with my mom that my interest, and it was interesting because she was watching a Spanish show on TV, and it was a kind of like the Oprah, but in the Spanish, called Christina. And they had drag queens on the show. And I remember my mom say, that's a disgrace. That's just horrible. And I looked at her and I said, those are people as well, Mom. And she stopped and she looked at me and she said, what are you trying to say? And I said, actually, Mom, I'm actually attracted to men. I have this attraction that I don't feel with women. And of course, immediately was, we're going to take you to get some help. We're going to take you to the church. And this is just a phase that you're going through. And every child goes through this. And, don't worry about it, but please do not tell your dad. And I was like, okay. So I lived my life in fear, not knowing when I was accepted by my family, my mom, but also coming out to her and being the youngest and the only boy in the family, just knew that it was probably heartbreaking for her to hear that her only son was coming out and queer. So I lived my life, but I always knew that my journey through the church system, through God, is what took me into these different places of life. And I attended many, many churches. But again, coming from going to church one weekend at a Catholic mass, sitting there for 2 to 3 hours, and then going to a Presbyterian on another weekend, it was just like night and day. So like for me, the religious background was just so confusing, so hard to just understand. And it was just crazy. And of course, I'm dealing with my own sexual, coming out and acceptance and within my family and my community. But my faith is something that has always kept me strong and going through this. And, I lived in Miami, lived in DC, lived in Atlanta, really didn't attend too many churches in those locations because I just never found anything that was safe for me to just be who I am, love God. And I knew all along that I was a child of God. And I know that He is the one that has really kind of guided me and protected me through my entire journey in life. And it was probably, I want to say, almost 2.5 years ago, that I came across Harvest. And it was through, work that I knew exactly what Harvest was. And I remember the day that I walked in to church. And of course, I sat in the back of the church, and I was no windows, no crosses, no, stained glass, it was just kind of, I was like, okay, I'm in a building here. Let's see what this guy is about. And this is referring to my pastor, Dan Miner. And I sat back there, and of course he opens up with, this is, we're an accepting church, and we believe in God, and we believe that everyone is welcome, no matter who you are and what background. And of course I'm thinking to myself, just because of my history, this guy wants something. He wants money, because of course that's what we know the church to be like. They just want money. So I listened, and I did not attend for the next couple of weeks because I was like, okay, I got to process this. And then I had the courage to go probably on my 3rd week. And I was like, okay, this is kind of seems like a cool place. I'm feeling a little more warmth here. And I introduced myself, and I just immediately felt this warmth of safety around who I was, and that my love for God is still there, and He never turned away. And no matter, what is going on in my life, or my sexual orientation, or who I choose to sleep with, or whatever it may be, that I am still a child of God. And so I continued to, attend Harvest, and just got so close to the family. They have welcomed me in as, one of their own brothers. And it is such a great relief to be able to attend a place of worship where you can be yourself, and you feel safe, and you feel loved, And like I tell people, I don't feel like I'm going to church on Sundays. I really do feel like I am going to see my family and my friends, because that's exactly what it is. It's, for me, a social gathering of God's children put in under the roof with, led by, Pastor Dan. And, his messages are just spot on. It really does open up, and think about so many things. And of course, I'm still trying to deal with my healing aspect of it. I went through a marriage and, divorce about 2 years ago, and I'm still rebuilding myself and understanding, that there's no shame and there's no blame, and you are a child of Christ and Christ loves you. So having that safe place to go to, it's like Sunday mornings for me. I look forward to this now. Whereas before, as I was a child attending church, I was just dreading going to church with my grandparents, because I was like, oh, can I just be sick one weekend and not have to go? But I just knew that even though I was sick, I still had to attend church with them. So yeah, that's been my journey, and I am in a safe place. I love Harvest. I am a strong man today. I speak Jesus up and down, just like that song says. I speak Jesus because I am proud of who I am. I'm proud of what I've been able to overcome, and I know that God loves me and accepts me as his child no matter what. So, anyone that is going through this, I encourage them to, go to a safe place, a safe zone where you can go and be yourself with your loved ones. And I've met so many amazing people through Harvest, and continue to, be involved in my community. And how can I be a better person? How can I be a better, a child of Christ to someone that needs help? Even if it's just to sit there and listen, whether it's attending, Manatee Pride, Sarasota Pride, Diverse Fest that we have, which is an amazing event. So what I am saying is find a safe place. Find a place where you feel comfortable, loved, unconditionally, no matter what. Leave the shame behind, leave the blame behind, and live your life to the fullest. In today's world, we know that life's too short. We've gone through so much in life, being able to become the people that and person that you want to be, right? And be accepted. Know that you are loved by God and you are a child of God. It's probably the best thing ever. And that's the way I walk my journey each and every day today, knowing, looking up in the sky and saying, thank you, Lord Jesus, for another day of life, but also for protecting me and guiding me and giving me the strength to go do the things that I know you want me to do. So as we end this, I just want to say thank you. Have an amazing, amazing time and journey through this process, and may God bless every one of you.
So that's our final personal story. And I know Emily and Essence are on the screen tonight. I want to thank all of those who've shared. Luke, our first week, and last week, Jakima, just wonderful illustrations of what we're talking about, the personal journey that these individuals have taken to find community in a church. Before, Richard, if I'm going to pass it off to you in just a moment, but as I was listening to Julio, I thought another suggestion when you go into your breakout room is encouraging those who say, yeah, I want to take some steps, but I just have fear. And, talking about that, but also what does it take to embrace courage? Just two different thoughts there. All right. Richard, what do you have for us tonight?
Well, it's kind of hard to know what to add when it's already been said and not feel repetitive. So I start with that. I'm a therapist at Samaritan Counseling Services. I've been there part-time. I'm semi-retired for about 5-6 years now. I think the only thing I need to add is about the word fears. I wrote that down before you mentioned it. I think that's a place where folk will come to counseling, and folk will enter this LGBTQ community. I started 4 weeks ago and said, I don't even know how to say the initials. I've got it now. Slow. When I can say it really, really fast, look out. Fears. I have an affinity for this particular topic that is professional and personal, and I'll just speak a minute to that. When I was at First Presbyterian Church, had a counseling center called Church Street Counseling Center back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And I had one client come in who said, I'm gay, but I don't want to be. And there was popular in that day and in that church a conversion therapy conference. And he came from that conference and he wanted my professional help to help him switch. It was very simple for me at that time, by that time. And that was very respectfully, I says, no, I can't help you. And no, I will not be the person who will work with you professionally as a counselor. So we had a very nice conversation, very candorous, and parted disagreeing to disagree. Disagreeing, however you say that, without being disagreeable. The reason I got to that point, being able to say that, was because of the personal. I was born and raised in Gary, Indiana, next to Chicago. And my brother, 2 years younger than me, was in Vietnam as a soldier, a mechanic. And it was during that time that he would call us as a family, and he came out as gay. And he came out after that, after he got home. And it was major disruption for our family. My father was a World War II vet, Mr. Macho, and my mother was a very devout Christian. And so my brother got rejection and condemnation because my parents were afraid. My youngest brother was so intimidated and fearful that night when he first got told, he went out and got drunk and got in a fight. He had to prove his manhood. That's where he was starting from. Me, I was fearful. I was only in my 30s, and I didn't know what to make of this. I thought somehow it was catching that maybe I was secretly gay and didn't know it. That's where I started. And from then, we went through it. Each one of us went through the journey differently. And I guess I come out as a recovering male, but I also come out as recovering gay fear. And those misconceptions that were talked about, I can talk to that now about misconceptions. Not all of them. I'm still recovering. I'm still learning. That's okay. Because I really do believe this journey of affirmation is about it being a journey about progress and process, not perfection. So that's nice. One more thought. My spiritual theological father is a theologian by the name of Paul Tillich, who was very influential in the 60s, especially at the University of Chicago. He wrote a sermon that I read when I was 20 in college, and I absolutely, to this day, 50 plus years later, changed my life. He said 3 words: you are accepted. Well, isn't that full circle? So that's enough. Enough is enough is enough. Thanks for letting me make a few professional, personal comments to dovetail with this journey of 4 weeks.
You're welcome. And I want to thank you and Bill Clough and Laura Johnston for contributing each week. Some of you had a little more time than others, so we appreciate your willingness to speak into that. Before I send you off into your final breakout room, let me just, beyond the things you may have already thought about that you want to discuss, I'll throw a couple of questions up on the screen for you. The first one, what are you feeling led to do next in finding community? If you feel like you're led to some direction, and then what might be a next step for your church in creating community? I imagine you've already discussed that a little bit, but just encouraging you, prompting you to think on an individual level as well as your church level. All right, so I'm going to send you out into your breakout rooms. Well, do you all just want to go in one breakout room? Or do you care? All right, I'm going to send everybody to the same place. Let me, I know.
Do we need
Eric,
to go
yeah.
if we're going to the same place?
Yeah, we can all stay together, right?
Well, yeah, okay, all right. I'll just facilitate it. Here we go. We'll just stay together. There you go. So anyone who wants to come off mute and answer any of the questions that we prompted out there to start our discussion. Let's start, let me narrow that down. If you're like, I feel like as an individual, I have a next step that I feel led to take, and you would like to share that. Or if you have any encouragement for someone. Bill, I see you come off mute. Bill Sitterly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an interim pastor, so I have to watch my steps because I want the church to be led as opposed to my pushing them. We've got a grand entranceway. I have a vision of a large flag hanging there someday, but I can't go too fast. So a couple weeks ago, I put a very small sign up saying we're proud supporters of Covenant Network Presbyterians and a little pride heart, and nobody said anything. So that means we can do something a little bit bigger and just go in little baby steps. And but I was serious. I do think showing this Amy segment to session would be a wonderful next step.
Perfect. Bill Clough, did you have something to add?
Well, as I was listening, one of the things I very, very much appreciated is the baby steps thing. If you try to move too far, if you try to move too fast, you'll end up creating more problems than solving them. There's already a highly polarized society out there. So one thing that Dan said when he was talking about his experience after the Pulse event, that when you describe what you're doing as being loving or basic human rights or just caring for people, period, it doesn't have to, you don't run the risk of saying this is gay-centered. It's not gay-centered. It's human-centered, it's gospel-centered. And people will come along with that to a degree they won't if they think you're polarized, if they think it's your issue.
Anyone else? If you want to expand it to talk about next steps at your church, feel free. Linda?
I was just going to say, if any of you on screen went to the Venice Orchid Show, did any of you go to the Venice Orchid Show? I was quite amazed at the Venice Orchid Show. All of the volunteers and the members of the Orchid Society in Venice, at their show, they all had gay pride t-shirts on with a rainbow, and I was very aware that they were all dressed in these orange shirts with the rainbow and so on. And like, it was, I don't want to say in your face, but it was like they all looked the same, and you were able to find a volunteer or a member through this dress. But it was so lovely that they were proud to wear these shirts and express their feelings openly. And I mentioned to one of them about their shirts. And I think that people just, you have to put something forward so they'll be aware. like outside of our church, I'd really like to see a gay pride flag flying. Not a huge one, but a small one, like one of those ones that flies that says welcome. You know, that one that stands, it's a feather flag, I think it is. But welcome, but maybe have the rainbow colors on it. You know, that it's more subtle, but it's welcoming. The colors make you aware of what it is about. So that's what I would like to see at our church. I don't know, Bill, if that would work or not. A feather flag.
I've done it before at other churches.
Woohoo!
And you know, you can get the Presbyterian symbol in rainbow colors
It's
for website.
on our website.
Good. Yeah.
Pastor Elizabeth, since you just came off mute, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you to give whatever thoughts come to your mind about, from a staff perspective, embracing courage when it feels like I got to have some courage here to lead whatever that next step is. How would you encourage staff members to embrace their courage?
Well, I think Amy mentioned that, you know, you don't listen too much to the laggards. You know, I think you know, strategically gain support and then move on with the support you have. And I haven't always been good at ignoring those who would complain or be slow. So because my challenge is that I want everybody to come along. But sometimes you just have to have the courage to step out and trust that it will be okay.
Other thoughts or even questions that someone may have? Well, if you do, certainly raise your hand or come off mute. While I have a moment here, I wanted to share something that I saw on Project Pride's website that goes along with one of the suggestions Amy had. It's not church oriented, but it may give you an insight on how you might share that you are welcoming, an affirming place. This is on their website. You see up here, up here in the search bar, their website is ppsrq.org/our business welcomes. You can find this under community, our business welcomes. And if you scroll down, they give you suggestions on wording and signage to consider, as you see there. And it's even offered in different languages. Well, the other language, the Spanish and English, not all languages, but just a suggestion there that I thought I'd share with you, just if you're thinking about what kind of language you want to include on a signage. Amy, I'm not sure if you've seen this and what your thoughts on it, but since I saw that, and they just have a listing of businesses here, I didn't see any churches on it. I'm sure it's probably not designed for that, but just thought I'd share that, see if that was helpful.
I think that's so cool. And I know that when I see businesses that have those signs, I definitely feel more like I want to go there.
Yeah, right.
Question for Amy.
Go ahead.
You mentioned a group called Watermark. I was a nice multitasker and I couldn't find anything on the internet. So what am I looking for?
So it's a LGBTQ publication. It's produced by it, unless it's no longer, I mean, the last I checked, it was.
I found a retirement community called Watermark, but I didn't think that was it.
No, I don't think so. Well, maybe they're not. I mean, I see their website, Watermark Online. So it looks like they're still, let me put it in the chat box. well, let's see, I don't think I'm on their home page. Here we go. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that prompts me to share the link to the survey. So I've copied that and I'm going to put that in the chat. I've discovered, I don't know what the problem is. In our last meetings, when I put something in the chat, some people say they can't see it. So I just entered that. If you see it, can you sort of acknowledge you see a link there that I just put? Okay, fantastic. That's the link to the survey. I don't have everyone's email addresses. So if you can, save that. If you're not in the emails that I send out to the leaders, I will certainly send that out to the leaders. But if you can take note of that and get us your answers to the survey, we would appreciate it. It's a 7-question survey, so it shouldn't take you terribly long. It'll only be up through Friday, I believe. So if you can take a few minutes to do that, that would be fantastic. Well, everyone, we're at our 75-minute mark. This has been a wonderful journey. I will tell you that I anticipate the leadership team of the churches, which there's about 9 participating churches now in this cohort, which is just fantastic. Love seeing that. We will be thinking about sort of what's next for us as well, not just the church, your church, or you as individuals. So be paying attention at wherever you heard about this class, be paying attention to what we may put together for the rest of 2024. So again, thanks to everyone for participating, all the presenters. I think we accomplished what we went after, if I may be so bold as to say that. So thank you for attending this evening. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
We're grateful.
Have a good night.